Now we'll get right to our first panel discussion about recruitment, and I now invite our 5 esteemed panelists to the virtual stage. Dan Kinsella, Chief of the Halifax Regional Police, Nishan Duriyappa, Chief of Peel Regional Police, Reginald Hosey, Major at the Orange County Sheriff's Office in Orlando, Florida, Rory Thompson, Executive Director at Calgary Police Service, and Colleen Yee, Inspector at the Vancouver Police Department. In this session, we'll discuss the challenges police departments have faced over the last few years in terms of recruiting new personnel, which includes both rookies and experienced officers. We hope to answer questions like, how did these departments overcome these challenges? And what changes have they made in order to attract new recruits? Each panelist will have a few minutes to speak, and once we've heard from all 5 panelists, we'll open it up to a general discussion with our remaining time. That will be a perfect time to ask any questions that arise during the panel. Before we get started, I wanted to share a brief introduction for each of our incredible panelists. Serving as Chief of Police since July 1st, 2019, Chief Dan Kinsella leads Halifax Regional Police, Atlantic Canada's largest municipal police service. Chief Kinsella has 33 years of experience in policing and management. Committed to the philosophy and concept of community-based policing, Chief Kinsella recognizes that strong, sustained community partnerships are integral to effective crime prevention for a healthy and safe community. Chief Nishan Duriyappa was born in Sri Lanka and immigrated to Canada. He began his career with the Halton Police in December of 1995. In October 2019, he was appointed Chief of Peel Regional Police. He is committed to the safety and well-being of the community he serves, with one of the primary focuses being mental health and seeking multi-sectoral collaborative partnerships to reduce risk in the community. Major Reginald Hosey has been employed with the Orange County Sheriff's Office in Orlando, Florida since 1997. His career has included assignments in special operations, uniform patrol, criminal investigations, and court security. Major Hosey is currently commanding the Human Resources Division, overseeing all aspects of human resources for more than 2,300 active employees and their dependents. Also joining us today is Rory Thompson, who is currently serving with the Calgary Police Service as the Executive Director responsible for sworn recruitment and learning. Prior to joining CPS in May 2021, he was the Director of Learning and Development and Military Relations at Canadian Pacific Railway. Born and raised in Scotland, Rory also spent 11 years as a British Army officer. He has a strong focus on employee engagement and relationship building that allows him to lead high-performing teams with strong emphasis on increased collaboration, respect, accountability, diversity of thought, innovation, and continuous learning. Last but not least, our panel also includes Inspector Colleen Yee, who is a 28-year member of the Vancouver Police Department. Her work in patrol as an investigator in drugs, sex crimes, and as a level 2 undercover operator for over 10 years provided opportunities to work many different projects locally, nationally, and internationally. Inspector Yee is currently the commander in the training and recruiting section. She has over 30 years of martial arts experience and was a certified use of force instructor. She has been identified as a subject matter expert on many topics and has presented internationally. To our panelists, thank you for your time today and to have this important dialogue. We are now going to hand it over to Chief Duriyappa.
Thank you, Brittany, and pleasure to join this panel. And Dan, good to see you all the way from Halifax. I first of all want to say that the dynamics of policing have really, in the last 2 years, you take the health pandemic out of it, but everything that we've seen geopolitical, of course, post George Floyd, and localized incidents have really, put a lens on policing in such that we have had an awakening where, I say here at Peel Region is that we really, the emphasis of being informed by the community that we serve has really come to the forefront. Our perspective at Peel Regional Police is that policing cannot be seen as proprietary. It has to be, informed and owned by the public. And so the reason I say that is that our approach is really, we want to reflect that in our recruiting and how we see people coming into our organization. For those that may not be aware, Peel Region is in Ontario, Canada. Of course, if you fly into Toronto, you're actually flying into Peel Region to Pearson International Airport. We police a population of about 1.5 million and have an organization of 3,400 members here at Peel. And the municipality itself is one of the most diverse in Ontario. It has an approximately a 70% racialized population, which is an amazing, diverse community, which of course, as you know, when we get into the discussion of our desire to be reflective of the community, also is one of the challenges that I'll eventually get to. But we have, in the 2 years that I've been here at Peel, have hired the most amount of uniform sworn officers that we have in decades. In 2020, my first year, we hired over 160 officers. In 2021, hired 105. This year, we are on deck to hire about 122 officers. I do, just as Chief Kinsella mentioned, would like to also speak to the other types of hiring that we do. We know that every police organization is built upon amazing women and men that are in a civilian capacity, also in a uniform capacity, but we also have a cadet program and an auxiliary program, which is the auxiliary program are highly trained volunteers. And our auxiliary complement is roughly 10% of our sworn contingent. And twice a year, we hire auxiliary members. Many of them move on and are advanced into the constable or cadet program. Some even join our civilian program. And there is mandatory training. One thing I'd like to say is that at Peel, what I tell my team is that, an aspirational statement is that we want to be modernized with our policing approach to be able to shift, from a non-traditional policing approach to modern one. I think that's what our community is looking for. Second is we want to be flexible and innovative. And the third is I say, if we're not good on the inside, we're not good on the outside. And that's a commitment that as a police agency, we have to invest in our people, from leadership, equity, diversity, inclusion, from the business skills and acumen, to make sure that they're amazing when they interact with the public. But those three buckets are actually what we've rolled into our recruiting campaign. If you go to, on social media to Peel Police Recruiting on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, you'll see those elements are part of our campaign. And we've bundled this into what we call as the Faces of Peel. And so our emphasis on hiring new officers and members to Peel Region is that we really desire strong ties to our community, whether it be through employment, volunteering, or other means. That doesn't mean we will not take people internationally. We've taken officers from right across out west, or people that are coming from out west, but we really want to see them have a strong commitment. When we look at some of the challenges policing have had in the last couple of years, if we, I think Chief Pedersen mentioned it in his opening keynote, when we talk about what has policing done to, peel back some of the elements of systemic discrimination, systemic racism. A lot of things we hear from our community is they want to see people that understand the heart and sentiment of the local community. And what does that look like to hire people that can, unpack that and relate to them? So, part of what we want to do is to attract and retain, professional and skilled employees that represent the community from a diversity and skill set. We also want to develop and implement initiatives that support our people through equity, diversity, inclusion, to make them, better when they interact with the public. And a third element is that we want to promote the well-being of our people, our employees that we hire, to provide them resources and opportunities that give them development, training, and promotion. So here in the Ontario context, and I'm not quite sure what it looks like in the other, it's probably similar to other provinces, states, and municipalities, but here in Ontario, you are at the base level required to have a certificate by the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police. The acronym is OACP. The OACP proctors an applicant testing system, which you can find on most of the Ontario 43. There's 43 police agencies in Ontario. You can find on all of their websites. It requires you to be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, at least 18 years of age, and of course be in good health, physical health. There's medical requirements as there are. Clearly the moral character and habits, but some of these standards that are here in Ontario are you have to have 4 years of secondary school education or its equivalent. And that's the equivalent that allows international contacts to come here. There are, of course, other requirements that I won't go into that are probably quite commensurate to what's happening in other police agencies. But to do that, you have to have this OACP certificate, which is the beginning of the constable selection process. There's a fee attached to it, which I'll speak to a little later, which can be a barrier. We recognize it can be a barrier for some people to consider policing. But what we ask is for our people to come to the table with some of these pre-requirements ready. When they do come to us, the application process is really user-friendly. It's an application online. There is initially a local focus interview. There is a physical prep test that has provincial standards. Then what we do is here at Peel is if we have an applicant that has some real potential, what we'd like to do is assign them to a recruiter to help shepherd them through the process. One of the things we've noticed is not everybody has the ability to come to our doorstep, fully equipped to navigate the complexities of a police recruiting process. So one of the efforts we'd like to do is sort of almost assign a recruiter as a mentor and a shepherd, so we can perhaps build into them in the spaces that we want to. One of the examples that we've seen particularly is from a gender-based area is to encourage women in policing. We know that's something we're trying to encourage right across probably North America and inclusive of Europe, is to spend additional time to help provide some of the skill sets and mentorship with either female recruiters or others that are in policing to help steward them through the process. The same goes for from here we know in Peel, as I mentioned to you, we have a high South Asian population. One of the elements that we see is that some of our communities, and it's not unique to here, if you policing not seen the way as honorable as it is here in Canada as it is perhaps in other countries. I know for me, Sri Lanka for sure, it's seen as an extension perhaps of the state. One of the barriers we see here is we not only have to convince a young person to consider policing, we also have to consider their family and social support systems to see it as an honorable profession. So one of the efforts we do is to step into either ethnocultural community centers, places of worship, to help normalize what policing actually is here. And for example, if we can get the support of a second generation of a parents and uncles and aunts to say it's okay for niche to apply, we know we get more willingness from a community to support them. So that requires a variety of different things. And here in Canada, we joke we have hockey night in Punjabi here on CBC, which is our national federal means. And I say to my team, can we have multilingual capacity to do recruiting drives? Can we step right into some of these places to do that? So a lot of it is intended on breaking down some of those barriers. Once somebody's hired, they in an Ontario context, they go to the Ontario Police College. There's one policing institution where we can send all Ontario police officers to. It's 3 months there, and they return back to Peel Police to do 8 weeks of post-college training, which gets them familiarized with localized systems. We normally send them 3 times a year in a group of about 40. We also have concurrent to that a cadet program. So the cadet program is another opportunity where we see young people that aren't quite ready to don a full, uniform and go to the police college ready as a sworn officer, but we kind of lock them in so we don't lose them. We see great potential in them. They have a contract of up to 14 months, which exposes them to policing here within the organization. They get uniforms, a variety of different functions that help support the organization. Many of them and almost all of them advance into the. I would be remiss if I don't stop. I think we all recognize that civilian hiring is also just as important to policing these days. Reginald, I don't want to put it on you or Dan Kinsella or Colleen or Rory. We look back, many of us got hired 20 plus years ago because we could do a mile and a half or do a bunch of push-ups, and then you find yourself trying to navigate an entire organization. When you look at the complexities of the rest of our organization, from analysts, records operators, analytics bureaus, information technology, fleet, and all these specialized areas, we have to go to real diverse civilians to bring them in. And so, that's a big thing for us to do. I think we would all probably be able to point to youth-related initiatives that we're doing to encourage young people to see policing as a career. I entered policing because a librarian slid me a co-op program with our local police agency to consider as a 16-year-old. And it wasn't necessarily because I saw the uniform and everything exciting that we do there, but we saw the people behind the uniform and the relationships, which, all of us on the screen are, either, spouses, mothers, fathers, partners, coaches in the community. And that connection to young people is significant here in Peel. We have a variety of different programs that are intended to allow youth to see pathways to policing. And, I think, in a nutshell, we really want to see the opportunity to unravel some of the barriers that prevent people from applying or considering applying. In a year where we have looked at the topic of systemic discrimination, and we know it exists in all human services, in education, health, transit, and in policing. One of the narratives we've seen is, what are the barriers that prevent certain populations from considering policing, and are there things we can do to diminish them? So we are open to a variety of populations. So with that, I feel like I kind of speed dated through the Peel police context, and we have some great panelists online here. So Brittany, I'll pass it back to you so that they can begin to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Duriapa. That was amazing. Moving on now to Major Reginald Hosey. You can take the stage.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's going to be a hard act to follow right there. But once again, thank you to everyone. Thank you, Brittany, for inviting us to be a part of this. Like you said, I'm Reginald Hosey from the Orange County Sheriff's Office here in sunny Florida. We are centrally located in the state, pretty much. So when I talk, it's obvious that all of us so far we're talking about getting engaged in the community. The opening by Chief Peterson was great about engaging and being diverse. So we're all pretty consistent on that. So what I want to do today was talk a little bit about challenges and some strategies that we employ, and obviously take questions at the end if there's anything that I can answer. So I always like to say that recruiting is not necessarily a one size fit all. And sometimes people look at it like that. And, we've taken on the mantra that no, it's not a one size fit all. And what you have to do, and what a lot of people have mentioned here about their communities and representation, how diverse the communities are. And when we talk to our recruiters, we're like, hey, we educate them and make sure they're well educated on the Central Florida area, because when you're looking at what we have here as far as our population, is 1.4 million residents, 75 million on an annual basis that comes through Central Florida. So the Orlando area, obviously, we have some great attractions here in Disney, SeaWorld, and Universal Studios. So we get a lot of diverse cultures coming through here. Inside of Orange County, we have like the second largest university in the country, in the University of Central Florida, through enrollment. And we're just a high tourist and hospitality industry. So I want to talk about those challenges, and I think that we all focus on and try to overcome is that everyone's hiring, right? So like Chief said, the biggest thing is that at the Orange County Sheriff's Office, we're charged with hiring both sworn and civilian employees. So we have over 2,500 employees here. Over 1,800, which are our sworn employees. On average, we get over 120 something thousand website hits. So we do attract a lot of people. But as far as applications on an annual basis, we normally average about 9,000 applications, both for sworn and civilian. And we can see that dip down over the last couple of years. And that's kind of like what we're going to talk about here, about the challenges, because 2021, we're at about a little bit over 5,000 as far as our applications. So we saw a big dip in that. And so when we talk about those challenges, what's the biggest thing? So I talk about the pandemic first, and for our civilian employees, because I think that's where we got hit the hardest. Because as I mentioned about our industry here, we have a lot of tourist industries, a lot of different private companies here that have been able to even attract some of our civilian employees. We have over 160 something different civilian jobs here. And so the pandemic, I think what people learned from the pandemic is the fact that you can actually keep business going and you can have employees work from home. And so when you start talking about the technical jobs, the professional jobs, whether it's human resources, information technology, those types of jobs, where now companies are attracting them to come to their organization, and they're offering them to work from home. That's really a big thing. So I think in law enforcement, sometimes we have a tendency to move a little slower than the private industry. And some of the things that we're actually looking at, can we function as a law enforcement agency in some of our jobs where we can allow people to work from home, whether it's 2 or 3 times a week or something like that, only come into the office a couple times a week. So I think we've learned globally from the pandemic is that organizations can continue to function and give the opportunity to our employees to work from home. So that's a big challenge now. And we're looking at how we can keep up with that, the private sector, in reference to retain our employees versus them leaving. And as mentioned before, I think how law enforcement has been viewed over the last couple of years with the George Floyd incident and other incidents, and I just don't want to push that one out there, but other incidents, and our recruiters, they're out there, they have over 6,000 contacts a year, and as they go out and they recruit, they hear some of those things about law enforcement. Can they trust law enforcement? Do they want to be in law enforcement for the trust factor, the inherent dangers that we come across? So law enforcement, people are questioning whether or not they want to be in this job like in years past. So those are some of the challenges that we overcome, and our recruiters are getting out there and educating our agency as a whole. We hold a lot of different events around the community to engage into our community and get that trust back and have people want to enter into law enforcement. Some of the strategies that we employ, probably much like everyone else, we attend job fairs, career fairs throughout the state of Florida and throughout the country at the traditional colleges and universities. Also, historical Black colleges and universities here in the United States, we recruit those heavily to meet the demands of a diverse population. One of the things I want to highlight that's really been great for us is that we focus on our veterans. So we go to military bases, not only here in Central Florida, but around the country as well. And we've done an outstanding job, I must say. I have to acknowledge that for especially our military recruiter. We have one person, our military recruiter. He specifically targets military personnel. He attends a lot of the transition assistance programs for our military people that are leaving the military and coming and transitioning into the civilian world. Just a few accolades that we've had in reference to successes. We were voted #1 in Central Florida by the Military Times, Best for Vets. We were actually voted 2nd in the nation here by the Military Times, Best for Vets, for our recruiting efforts and our hiring of our military personnel. And lastly, we received the Gold Employer Award from the U.S. Department of Labor as well, just really hiring our veterans. And once again, that's not just focusing on our sworn employees, focusing on our civilian employees as well, because we know, we have to be able to let everyone know about our agency and what the opportunities are. Like I said, we have over 170 different civilian type jobs here. So if we are recruiting people into our agency, we're able to possibly get their family members here in the agency. I know we talked about generational law enforcement officers, but we also here have generational civilian employees that they get in, whether it's through our comm center, fleet, all those different things that we've mentioned before. We're really big in the community. I think we keep talking about that, going to back to school events, going to cultural events, festivals. And I think that's what some of our big successes when you start talking about diversity and mirroring your community. We go out to those cultural events and recruit, and what better way can you do that when it's like it's right there for you, when you have the different community organizers for the different cultural festivals and events, attending parades and different things such as that. But before I go, I think one of the biggest things that we can talk about is retention. And later in the program, we're going to have one of our training lieutenants who's going to be on and kind of talk about those efforts, because I think one of the biggest things that we need to do is invest in the people that we go out and we recruit, because you spend a lot of money, time, and effort going out and recruiting our personnel. But a lot of times when you go out on the recruiting trail, they want to know, they're informed. They've gone onto your website, they've talked to other people. They want to know, what is it? Why should I join your organization, right? And so I think training is one of those aspects where they want to know how much are you going to invest in them as far as training, both personally and professionally. Promotions and transfers, what does that look like? How does the organization focus on the diversity of training, the diversity of promotions and transfers? I've always said, when I go teach, I always say, if you can't see it, you can't be it, right? And so when people are looking at your organization, they want to see how does your command staff or your senior staff, how do they look? Are they truly working on diversity, or is it just lip service? And so I think internally you have to focus on that, so people can see that you truly believe that and you are trying to mirror that of the population of your community. And lastly, very important, is work-life balance. And I know maybe a lot of people have talked about work-life balance. And what I mean by that is internally having programs that help people grow personally and professionally, whether it's wellness, physical fitness, whether it's mental health, whether it's financial fitness. There's so many people that I've seen throughout the years that they do a 25, 30-year career. And it's not just specific to sworn personnel, but then are they ready to transition into that retirement realm? Are they financially stable? Are they mentally stable and ready now to not do the things that they've done? People like us on this panel who have been able to achieve certain ranks here, you know, now they have to transition of not having all that underneath them. So what are you doing as an organization to make sure that when you have someone who is working through a career, that you're taking care of them on the front end, in the middle, and towards the back end as they go into retirement? And as Brittany said, you know, me being the Human Resources Division major, you know, I always say that HR is the heartbeat of the organization, because we take care of, we go out, we recruit people, we bring them in, we train them, we give them benefits, but and promote them. But more importantly, once they leave here, they're still attached to the agency until as retirees. And so we need to be looking at that piece, that how can we take care of our employees and keep them healthy and happy throughout a career. So that's my quick spiel about the Orange County Sheriff's Office in reference to some of our challenges and some of the things that we do to try to not only bring people in, but to keep them in and retain them as they go through a successful career.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Major Hosey. That I loved hearing the perspective of you down in the States, since we're all up here in Canada. So I thank you for that. Now we're going to move on to Rory Thompson.
Hey, Brittany, can you just give me a thumbs up? You can see my screen.
I sure can.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, thank you, Brittany, and thank you, fellow panelists, for this sort of insightful chat so far. Good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. My name is Rory Thompson, and I'm currently the Executive Director of Learning and Recruitment at Calgary Police Service. And I am a civilian. I am not a sworn member. And as Brittany said earlier, I've been here for just shy of 12 months, thoroughly enjoying myself, as it's a great environment and industry to be part of. Over the next 5 minutes or so, really my intent is to somewhat continue the conversation around challenges that we are seeing here at Calgary Police Service, but more importantly, what are we doing about it, and what tactics are we employing? And then at the end, I'll share some recent successes that we are seeing as a result of all this work that we are putting into. Before I start, though, I just want to provide some context into who we are and where we are with regards to recruitment. So Calgary City is 1.34 million people. And for those that don't know, it's in Alberta on the western side of Canada, and it is actually the largest city in Alberta. We have a CPS itself is made up of 3,000-ish members, and it's roughly split down to 75-25% civilian sworn split. And as mentioned earlier, that civilian side is actually growing at a sort of more rapid rate than the sworn side, because we, as a recent review, sort of identified the need to bring in SMEs into specific roles and ultimately let those sworn officers who joined the service for a specific reason do their job. And also, every time we pull someone from the sworn side to come into headquarters or whatever it may be, we're pulling one person off the street. So we've identified that. So as we go forward, that number will increase. As it currently stands, though, recruitment, sworn recruitment at CPS is an absolute service priority. And this is for many reasons over the last few years. First is higher than average attrition for many reasons. We also were given some recent growth by the city of Calgary in the region of about 100 over the last 2 years to obviously build us up there. And that service review I mentioned a second ago also identified capabilities and future strategies and vision, which ultimately require people to fill. So ultimately, we are in a position now where we have lots and lots of vacancies in the service, and some of which are actually having a slight operational impact on the front line. And I'm sure we're all going through it as well, as those short and long sort of term medical disability sort of vacancies are not true vacancies, but yet they are a compound effect on ultimately what is we're already seeing with that sort of demand on policing, and also the not lack of resources, but ultimately the stress on our resources. So what are we doing about it? So our goal for recruitment this year is 135. And just to put that into perspective, and the most that we've ever hired at Calgary Police Service is 112. Last year, we hired 110. So quite a significant increase on what we've historically achieved. However, the team from the recruitment and training aspect of the pipeline are more than up for it, because they absolutely realize that this is a service priority and it's going to have that strategic impact that we require. So in terms of how are we going to do it, we are going to have 5 classes of 24 for recruit classes. And then the intent is to have 3 experienced officer classes, which will be about 12 each. So doing the math, if we achieve every class, we'll come in at about 156, but we also have to sort of account for backtrooping, as well as potentially not filling every seat in every class as well. However, I can report that we're absolutely on track to achieve our goal, which is fantastic news. Albeit, like everyone else has already discussed, we are seeing challenges out there each and every day from the recruitment aspect. So first and foremost, I've split it down into 2 sort of areas, the attraction and outreach aspect, and then we'll come into sort of recruiting process. So on the perception of policing, again, it's been mentioned a few times already. It's probably fair to say over the last couple of years, the police industry as a whole, it's taken a bit of battering with regard to that perception. Defund the police, George Floyd incident, COVID as a whole that Reginald mentioned earlier has had a sort of impact there, as well as the stereotypical myths around policing as a career. And I think the chief mentioned it earlier, using that policeman terminology. And so we're trying to debunk those myths and stereotypes as well, and get away from that alpha male dominated industry. The other area here is competition is high. Again, some of that is due to COVID with the Great Resignation, and specifically here in Calgary, we are competing with the oil and gas industry. And right now, obviously, oil is on its way up. So we are actually seeing more people sort of go that way because of the high dollar sign that's attracted them to that industry. So we're dealing with that as well. But then even more specific, we are all friendly, but we are competing with each other for these candidates across the country, and I'm sure even in North America as well. And we're seeing that specifically on experienced officers. Many services out there have incentive programs to attract and draw those experienced officers, and you can see why, because they have got a sort of a reduced training burden. They're also going to have reduced risk when they hit the street, and they're hitting the ground running as well. I think one service in Canada here has a 20 grand incentive for an experienced officer. So we are competing, and it's a high area here because we're all experiencing these similar type of issues. The next point is around that sort of lack of business acumen. I think we go back to recent history, sort of 5-10 years, where we were getting thousands and thousands of applications per year. And so we didn't really do what is known as recruitment. We just had a somewhat of an intake process. So we ultimately are trying to get out of that sort of mindset and methodology about how we attract and retain our employees. But again, it's the acumen is not there or where it needs to be when we compare it to sort of corporate industry as well. And then on the EDI component as well, mentioned already several times, is that many of our diverse or minority communities don't see policing as a professional career. So that is a challenge, and it takes time to change that mindset, as well as sort of other areas of ED&I as well, is creating those relationships, which again take time. But like the Chief of Sudbury said earlier, like to us at CPS, diversity is more than just attracting people because of what they look like. It absolutely has a business result as well. So ultimately, we're attracting that diversity of thought, that diversity of background, experience to ultimately be better and get better results. As well as from a recruitment perspective, it is talent pools that we have not tapped into because ultimately we have not either required to in the past, or ultimately those minority groups coming to the cities are maybe being grown over the last several years at more of a rapid rate. But then when we look at business results on the front line as well, like if we could have members who communicate, build trust and resonate with our sort of communities easier, then we're probably going to see immediate business results with building those relationships, which then tie into recruitment. And then even just like the use of force is going to have an impact there as well. So then when we go down to the recruitment processes, I've split it down into two. The first is our provincial standards here in Alberta. They are very outdated. They've not been reviewed since 2004. And as a result, they are not aligned with our ED&I vision as a service, but also services in Alberta. And they're really designed to select out as opposed to select in. And again, that goes back to that point in 2004. We were getting thousands of applicants. So they're looking for any and every opportunity to ultimately push people out of the process. But we're in a different world now. And obviously those old archaic standards with many, many barriers to our ED&I efforts and microaggressions are also starting to affect us. And again, we're trying to make it a more equitable process. And just to give you a little example of something so small, but again, it's a barrier, is prior to applying in Alberta, you need to complete your 2-day first aid course at your own expense. And again, so it's got a money barrier. It's also got, during COVID last 2 years, people even getting that qualification was an issue. But it's something that we as a service can teach in a day, 2 days internally. So again, let's remove it from the standards and then put it as part of the training. So that's something that we have worked with already, and we're already seeing some movement on that front. So it's just a small example to highlight what we mean by those old archaic barriers and processes. And then the last one there is just our own internal internal processes. We somewhat need to get out of our own way, and that is with our structure. I mentioned the most we've ever hired is 112. So we're actually structured to hire 90. So looking at our goals this year, they're very lofty. However, we're working on that right now to ultimately change how we actually sort of structure the recruitment team itself. And then over the years, we have sort of mandated different things here and there, which over time has been sort of, this is legislation as opposed to internal policy. And we're slowly finding that things that were made as an assumption of being a legislation is actually just us mandating these extra, maybe more elite standards, which again, why are we doing that? Why are we sort of setting ourselves up for failure? An example here would be backgrounding. Up until very recently, every single employee or member who came through the recruitment process did 10 reference checks, each one taking a minimum of an hour. And it was ultimately common knowledge that this was a provincial standard. However, that is not the case. It was a CPS imposed standard years and years ago, which over time became sort of gospel. And so overnight, we changed it to 6 to sort of reduce that risk and reduce the time. So a 40% saving overnight, which is going to ease that sort of pipeline from recruitment into training. And then the next point I'm sure most services are sort of dealing with is their systems and data to then make data-informed decisions. I think someone mentioned it earlier around the speed at which we move compared to corporate is obviously quite vastly different. So again, getting that funding to ultimately implement huge system-wide, service-wide change on what are stereotypically a couple of $1 million, it is not easy and takes time. And as a result, the systems are slow, they're inefficient, especially in the recruitment pipeline. And also we can't glean that data to make then better and more informed decisions going forward as well. And the last one I'll just mention here is that risk appetite. Again, in some ways right now, the file managers who are sort of dealing with those applicants from the onset see themselves as gatekeepers, and rightfully so in a way, because after they start training at Calgary, we swear them in after 2 days. And so once they're in the system, it's obviously, as you know, extremely hard and time consuming to get them out. And so that risk appetite as it currently stands is not there, because they really see themselves as being tied to that individual, and they don't want their reputation being dragged down as well. But what are we doing about it? So the first and foremost on the attraction outreach, last year we developed a market and outreach plan, and we used SMEs to create this for us. And the difference being from what I mentioned earlier, this is proactive recruitment. It's not an intake process, it's recruitment. How do we get out there and pass our message on? It's targeted and it's got ROI attached to it. And what we mean by targeted is that we are using sort of the digital and social media capabilities at hand. We can target individuals who have shown any interest in policing throughout their career or their LinkedIn profiles, as an example. And then we built it into streams. One was mentioned earlier, the military stream, that's one of ours. We have an ED&I specific stream on many different areas, an example being Coffee with a Cop for the LGBTQ2+ community. Over COVID, we actually identified that this was a huge efficiency for us doing it virtually, and we could do many more and get many more people in over that time span. We also have partnered with education as well on those streams to ultimately try and attract those with a background in criminology, sociology, or whatever it may be. And then we also have the generic awareness stream, just to ultimately let everyone know that Calgary Police Service are hiring and should be considered a police service of choice if that is ultimately what you're doing. However, the biggest thing for us is that blended approach. Mentioned earlier by Reginald was that getting out there, getting in the faces of people is a must. So we've done that, and obviously during COVID, it's taken a slight drop. However, I have to say, our greatest benefit is going into the digital world, using social media, online advertising, because we can get to people that we would not normally get to. As an example, we had someone from Australia join one of our Coffee with the Cops a few weeks ago. And so but we can also target people as well. So if you Google anything to do with policing on Google, you ultimately then see an advertisement for Calgary Police. So it's a lot more targeted, it's a lot more efficient and effective as well. And we're seeing huge gains on this as well. So for example, one of our platforms we use is LinkedIn. And so we followed a class for a whole recruit program, and we identified different areas on the recruit program to showcase what we're doing to the public. But the idea here, it's not just about recruiting, it's also debunking those myths and stigmas around policing and educating them on what policing is and what it isn't through the medium of recruit classes, but also showing them the types of people that are coming into recruit classes. Gone are the days of your 23-year-old alpha male class of 24. We have single mums. We have people who've come over to Calgary as a new place of home, and we're hiring them. We have people who are athletes, Olympians. And so just that huge diverse mix of these classrooms is actually attracting people as well. And then the recruitment process itself, the internal stuff, we partnered with the University of Calgary in their specific Art of the Nudge program, which is an ED&I specific program that they have. And the first thing we did was ultimately get them to come in and assess from an EDI lens our whole recruitment process. And they came back to us with a list of recommendations, some easier than others. As an example, they went onto our website and provided us a long list of how our website is not attractive to women or to people from diverse communities, because like probably most of them, we're showcasing these sort of alpha male type people on our website. We're changing the pictures to represent the communities, changing some of even the wording of how we attract people. And something simple, and as an example, is education. High school diploma is a minimum, higher education preferred. But why do we even need to put the word preferred or higher education preferred? Because to some that may say, well, I've got high school diploma, but I might not make it. So I'll select out at this stage, even on the website, before even putting an application in. So again, get rid of it, because our minimum standard is our minimum standard. But they also spent a lot of time with our recruit unit as well. We put on training as part of it, but they really dived into the training, not only the Art of the Nudge folks, but also our recruitment team as well. And it was over about 3 months, and the training was specific to them, but it was around ED&I biases and how those biases can show up without them even knowing each and every day when they interact with recruits. And it was honestly so successful that the file managers were asking for more. We changed processes overnight that then had an immediate impact. And it was that successful that we're now using this same Art of the Nudge team to ultimately join different parts of our service to then have a similar impact there. And so we're extremely lucky that we had that partnership with them, and we're seeing immediate results as well, which is amazing. I mentioned earlier, we don't have the data. So we're really trying to create the data, and that starts with outreach. Who are we attracting in? And then through the pipeline of recruitment, where are people falling out, and ultimately trying to find out that why. And we didn't have that data to hand. So what we did was create a dashboard in-house to ultimately allow us to get real-time data that we can make decisions on. And this is an example of what the dashboard looks like. So it really shows us who's applying, how many are completed applicants, where they are in the pipeline, where they're applying from. So then we can send the recruitment team to that area to ultimately try and get most bang for our buck. Where are people falling out in the program? And then we also have some other parts of the dashboard that are extremely useful. How are we doing on recruitment? And what events or activities we're doing on outreach are giving us the most ROI, so then we can reinforce success, but also at the same time, we can maybe seek other opportunities for those that are not doing well. And the one, again, we mentioned how important it is to start measuring our ED&I activity and diverse data there. And so this shows us just at our fingertips, who's applying, how old they are, what communities they're coming from, what gender they are, how they identify. And so again, this is really important because if we're saying that we have a large group of this population applying at the front, but yet none are getting recruit class, why is that? And we're starting to ask those questions internally and then do something about it. And we've already implemented some initiatives based on this data. So the BDI interview, we created a workshop to help because we were losing 7% of people at that stage. We implemented a fitness boot camp specifically for women because the average failure rate was 45%. And we've only been doing that since September, and we've already seen many women come through the program and now enter class who were sort of products of that bootcamp. We saw that 41%-ish of our applicants were being referred by members. So we strengthened that and we reinforced that success to ultimately get more of our members applying, because we all know if someone is there promoting you and sort of bigging you up a little bit, you're more likely to apply. And I mentioned earlier, where are the applicants coming from? We recently sent the recruitment team to Saskatchewan to do a bit of a roadshow because a lot of our applicants were actually coming from that area. So again, get out there, get in front of them, but yet we're making data to drive these decisions. And the last area we're seeing success is what we're doing actually is around those internal provincial standards. So first and foremost, we are working right now to change the swearing in to the end of the recruit training program, so the end of the 6 months. And that really allows us to not only sort of have a little bit more risk appetite at the front end, but really we can ultimately help people along. And if they're not ultimately cut for this job, and let's be fair, not everyone is, it's a demanding job, then ultimately we can sort of either provide them a civilian opportunity internally, or we can obviously sort of direct them elsewhere as well. And then on the provincial standards, we have huge momentum already at the Alberta Chiefs of Police to do a short and long-term review of the whole process to make sure it's fair, it's equitable, efficient, and then ultimately defendable as well, which is ultimately going to have some long-term impacts there. And as promised, just some recent success we have had here. On LinkedIn, we're the top law enforcement page on Canada. We've increased our followers in the space of 4 months by 23%. On the outreach last year, we had 110 outreach events, of which 33% had a specific ED&I focus. And this year, we're going to build on that. Applications for this year, we have had a 56% increase in applications for Q1 of this year, which is absolutely phenomenal. And then again, success is the ACCP alignment on the vision of where we need to go, because we ultimately got that buy-in 2 weeks ago of what got us here is not going to get us into the future, and it's not going to attract the candidates that we need for the police service, a service of that community as well. So that was a huge success. And we had a class start on Monday, and here's just some some highlights of what they did. But honestly, I was blown away by the diversity of thought, background, experience, and education. First and foremost, I think it's the most women we've had in one class since 2016. The class specifically we're talking about, we had, I think it's 7 out of 24. The average age of the class was 31. So again, we're seeing that people are actually coming here after already having a career, which is a bit more maturity. And even that, the oldest of 43, a single mum. I guarantee we probably wouldn't have said that 10 years ago. So we're making progress there. 25% were born or lived in different countries. So diversity straight off the bat here of experience as well. And even internally in Canada, we well know that the West is very significantly different to the East. Very few percent of them have lived in different provinces. 8 languages spoken, which is unbelievable, specifically when they go to the front line and actually start using those languages with the communities that we serve. And then this one blew me away. We had 5 Olympic national standard athletes in the course starting on Monday, 21%. One of which was the 18 fittest women in the world at the CrossFit Games. One was an Olympic female pentathlete. So these are the types of candidates that are coming through, and honestly, it's blown us away, the standard. But at the same time, we still have tradesmen with high school diploma, or tradespeople with high school diplomas who are coming in and doing an amazing job as well. And having that diversity as a whole in these classrooms is bringing that learning to a different level as well. And never mind when they actually hit the street. So apologies if I spoke too fast or you didn't understand the Scottish twang. But again, really honoured to be here, and I look forward to the Q&A after this as well.
Thank you. That was amazing, Rory. And we are going to now move on to Inspector Colleen Yee.
Hello from the West Coast. I don't know if you can see behind me, but Vancouver is situated on the West Coast of Canada. And it is here that on a day like this, if you want to go skiing, golfing, or sailing, you can do it all on the same day. So a little bit about Vancouver Police Department. So we have a sworn membership of about 1,350 sworn members and just over 400 civilian members. How our department currently is, our internal demographics is that we had just in the last couple of years hit 26% of our sworn membership are women. 30% are of cultural backgrounds or racially diverse. We, in our operational environment, there are 49 different languages that are spoken or have efficiencies and fluencies in. In the ranks, in all of our ranks, we have LGBTQ2S plus representation. And in our superintendent rank right now, 62% are women. Our deputy chief rank, we have 3 deputy chiefs. 2 are of cultural diverse background, and 1 is female. So over the last 20 years, the way we have hired and the way we have promoted, we have been quite successful in representing the demographic that we serve in the city of Vancouver. We want to continue doing so. And like Rory was saying from Calgary PS there, historically Vancouver, our recruiting section was an intake section. Thousands of applicants would apply every year. Given the same challenges that everyone on the panel here has expressed, we saw the application process diminish significantly in the last 3 or 4 years. And to the point where there used to be thousands, we're like literally in the hundreds. Understanding that, we realized we can no longer just sit back and wait for people to walk in and then look at the pool of applicants there, because there is not enough. To go through the current pot and to find appropriate candidates is extremely difficult. And to fill the seats that we need filled, just to deal with attrition and retirement and whatnot, or transfers to other departments, we need a constant flow of recruits coming in. On average, in Vancouver right now, we're hoping to be putting through about 50 recruits a year. We're having some challenges trying to fill those seats. We are in competition in the Lower Mainland with probably 7 other municipal departments, let alone to other provinces and across Canada. So within a small geographical area, we have 7 other police agencies that we're competing with. So what we have done is, with my team, from a practical level, we had to learn and adapt in the sense of approaching recruiting with a more strategic lens. So we look at 7 to 8 key components in our recruiting strategies. So in our recruiting section, I have 2 sergeants, a staff sergeant, and 11 detectives that do the file application processing, the interviewing, the background check, and whatnot. If this was my dream wish at this point, and I was able to sort of move the resources around, I would have a team that was specifically designated for outreach. That's how important it is, as many on the panel have expressed, that component is. How do we get to the public in a way that makes policing a desirable profession again? When the drop-in applicants came in, I remember having a conversation with my children who are 15 years old, twins. And I asked them both independently and at separate times. I said to them, I go, why is it that now young people don't look at policing, firefighting, ambulance as really desirable careers like they did when I was young? And again, I spoke to them at 2 separate times. They had no time to sort of like talk to each other about what mom was asking them. And both of them said to me, Mom, there are so many opportunities out there right now for people where it's not hard, where it's not uncomfortable, physically, mentally, emotionally. There are jobs in existence now that didn't even exist in your time, where you can sit at a computer and be a YouTube star or a media influencer, and you can make $10,000 a week. So why would people want to go do a profession where you have to work night shift and you have to go through, emotional challenges and it's hard. And I walked away thinking that is a relevant comment from a generation that we are trying to recruit into policing. So how do we get around that? How do we find the right people with the right sort of intrinsic values that would be suitable for this profession that we've all chosen, and we all know how hard it is, and still reflect the community that we police and serve? And part of that is the importance of relationship building. So our outreach is significantly a high priority for us, and how to develop strategies around that. So we look at some key elements when developing recruiting strategy at BPD. We do an environmental scan. So that can be anything from corresponding with our partner agencies, whether it's in our province or across Canada, very much like this panel, sharing information about what each other are doing, what they're seeing amongst their applicant pools, some of the administrative efficiencies or inefficiencies that can be addressed. For us in Vancouver right now, we're still paper-based in the sense of the recruiting package. So an applicant still, at this point in time, has to download or print out an application process, fill it out and answer it in handwritten language, and then submit it back to us. And then it's this binder that's been passed around through each stage of the application process. That's a barrier time-wise, it's a barrier for applicants. So right now we have a request for purchase order in looking at a electronic system that would best suit the needs that we have within our recruiting process. That will help address some of the inefficiencies and streamline the process some more. Also, I feel that we have not leverage the social media virtual platform enough. The majority of our young people now, where do they live? They live in the virtual world. They're constantly on their phones. They get their information from social media, from the internet. So how do we develop strategies and campaigns to reach our target audience with the type of impact that will make the Vancouver Police Department stand out for them and consider policing as a career? One way we've done that, one of the strategies that I'm employing is similar to Calgary PS, sitting down with subject matter experts. So the Vancouver Police have a foundation that support us with many of our initiatives, community initiatives. Those foundation members, many of them are major corporation leads, executive directors of major businesses, who all have marketing teams and public relations teams. We have relationships with them. So we are now sitting down with their marketing teams to see what kind of strategies they would develop and propose if they were doing a recruiting campaign for the police, or how they attract applicants for their businesses. How do they retain them? So looking outside of policing to see what the private industry is doing in their recruiting processes and developing strategies that would be applicable for policing. So that is ongoing right now, and we're getting some really exciting ideas that are being tabled. Also working with our own public affairs section, our outward facing messages and our internal facing messages. How are we messaging to our members and getting our members to help us recruit? Because again, recruiting for the department isn't just the responsibility of one section. It is a departmental responsibility, and then it's also a community responsibility. So with our members, we come up with different incentives on how they can bring to us members or of the community that they come into contact with that they would want to work beside. Who do you come across in your daily interactions that you would think would make a good police officer, and who you would trust working beside? So getting those personal referrals, getting our community volunteers. The Vancouver Police Department has over 1,000 volunteers in various different programs that we run. Employing them in a way that makes them become recruiters. So what we are doing, and we'll be fully launching in the next little bit, is going out to each of these programs that we are associated to or that we run, and speaking to those community volunteers and encouraging them to become part of our recruiting team. And our volunteers love being part of the Vancouver Police Department. So why not leverage that sentiment and that loyalty and help them promote the message? Because with 1,000 volunteers, the ripple effect of who they come into contact is exponential. So let's take advantage of that. Another strategy that we are employing is also in our social media, consulting again with subject matter experts or people of the demographics that we are targeting. What do they want to see? So similar to the people are the police are the people. What do they want to see in their police department? What would make policing attractive to them? And then sitting down and brainstorming with them and creating public media messages, campaign strategies that will incorporate and embrace those messages and information that they provided at the table for us. So constantly not sitting back and being satisfied what we currently are doing that we have deemed successful, because clearly given the environment, that's not the case anymore. The competition is fierce, granted, but I look at that competition for resources as challenging us to be better and more cognizant and more accountable for how we are going out there. And very much like Rory with your dashboard program there, using data-driven information to help us develop strategies on how we should target, where we should target, and what we need to change given the feedback that we're getting from the results of the strategies that we've implemented. So those are some of the ways from sort of that administrative platform, from that social media recruiting platform that we're employing. We're also, like some of the other departments, we have a special municipal constable program also. So as we come across candidates who are not quite old enough, or maybe perhaps needs a little bit more life experience, but they have a great potential for becoming sworn members, we lock them into the SMC program. So here they receive a modified version of the police academy training that they would receive if they were sworn members. They are given duties that are assisting our operational members on the road with whether it's tagging property or it's community interaction, doing traffic, but they're out there, they're being seen by the public, they're gaining valuable police experience. Many of our SMCs are staffs at our jail. There they gain invaluable experience dealing with many of the clientele that they would be dealing with when they become sworn. So there they're building interpersonal skills, they're developing relationships already before they are even on the road as sworn members. So that's been an extremely valuable program. For lack of a better phrase, it's our farm team. And we also have an Indigenous cadet program. Here, we are attracting people with backgrounds from the Indigenous nations, and when they're in this program, they're hired within the department, and they're working in different areas where the civilian members would be working. So whether they're working at our kiosk or helping in our property office and various other areas, they're gaining police administrative experience, they're interacting with other police members, they're bringing their experience back to their communities regarding the relationships they're building. They become ambassadors as well as potential candidates as sworn later on in their development. So we're seeing a lot of success there. And then technology-wise, again, we are looking at the electronic system of the application process. We're looking at the training modules the training systems that we currently have, putting that together in a more streamlined system where it's more accessible to people to view the type of training that VPD offers throughout one's career. And then getting the message out. Our current campaign right now to attract applicants is that what makes Vancouver unique to all the other departments that are also wanting their time and basically their lives for a career in policing. We look at what sets us apart, and we highlight those in our media campaign. So right now, the current media campaign is that Vancouver is the place to be. Not just the Vancouver Police Department, but Vancouver City is the place to be. And how so? And sort of like the intro that I gave. Here in Vancouver, we are a major port city. We are big city policing, again, with a small town feel within our policing department. We have demonstrations year round. We have world events that happen here. And within the Vancouver Police Department, you can have career within many careers. So given today's generation of wanting experiences, they don't have to go from job to job, from different employer to different employer. They can find that within our department. So that message is getting conveyed out there. And that is, we hope, is appealing to this generation now, where for us, we join a career and we're with one career for like 30 years. Today, on average, I believe what they say is that one individual from our younger generations may have 7 to 8 to 12 careers within their lifetime. So within a larger organization such as our organization, they can have that. So those are just some of the strategies that we are implementing and employing and developing to address our challenges around the shortage of applicants.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Colleen. That was awesome. And I just wanted to say thank you to our 5 panelists. That certainly gave us a lot to think about in terms of recruitment and where we go from here if we are to progress forward. We are running a bit behind, so we're only going to be able to answer about 1 or 2 questions. But to our audience, if you have any after the event ends, you can reach out to our panelists at any time. So our first question, it says, it has been widely reported that the Great Resignation has affected private industry across North America. Have your services seen an increase of resignations from members that left the profession altogether? This is something that has been identified in the educational and healthcare sectors. Anyone like to begin?
Brittany, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dan.
I'll jump in just real quick. So we have regular attrition that is occurring. We have people that are retiring and leaving the organization. We haven't seen mass resignations or withdrawal from policing for existing employees. We have the odd one here and there that decide to make a career change or to do something different. So we're personally not seeing that here in Halifax.
Brittany, I can just affirm what Chief Kinsella said, that we have not seen the same thing. Just the anxiousness around the pandemic in our context has actually, I think more people have chosen to not retire because of the uncertainty of what that means for them. I am on a meeting with some chiefs in the States, and I'm not sure what Reginald's experience is, but I know in some US cities they did see an exodus of officers, but I don't think in our context in Ontario we're seeing that at all.
We have seen some law enforcement officers leave. They've been able to, through a 20, 25-year career, they've been able to gain, other, administrative experience and training and, just work on their resumes. And now they have the opportunity to leave and go to teach, whether it's teaching or some other private industry where they can be administrators. So we've seen that. And I mentioned earlier, same thing that we're losing our civilian employees as well. I recently lost one of my compensation analysts here in the HR division. She was able to gain more salary and also work from home. That was one of the biggest things. So I once again, I think those are some of the challenges that we face, or that's one of the challenges that we face that we're going to have to figure it out on the law enforcement side, and agencies have to figure that out, and how can we retain them.
Rory, Colleen, any notes on that?
For our members, we're not seeing a huge departure. In fact, again, retirement, absolutely, we have that. But for the most part, our retainment level is quite good. On our civilian side, however, I think like a lot of people, we're having a hard time there. Many people don't know what kind of civilian work is available within policing. So again, with us right now, we're sitting down with our public affairs, with our civilian managers, and we're developing recruiting strategies on how to attract people to policing from the civilian side and getting the best sort of return on investment on where to go to direct those strategies.
Just to echo everyone, we're not seeing a huge change. Our attrition rate's normally about sort of 4 to 5%, and it's not changed much over the last couple of years, especially when you compare that to sort of stereotypical civilian attrition at 15%. And again, we had this conversation a few days ago, actually, and one of the things that came up was like the reason people come into policing is very much a calling. And I think when we see the Great Resignation, people have taken that pause and really reflected on what they value and ultimately what they're doing with their life. And I think for police officers, they were being fulfilled because of it was a calling for them, the jobs that they do focused on community, etc. So from the Great Resignation perspective, maybe that is one of the many factors that we're not seeing the impact that we ultimately see. And we also then flip the coin onto the civilians because we're seeing a little bit more movement on there, just like everyone else is. And again, people generally come to the policing for the sort of the job and the role itself as a civilian, but also working for the government or working for sort of municipalities is generally stereotypically a little bit less demand, but their salary reflects it. But I think over the last couple of years, that demand work-life balance has been sort of mixed and a bit more demanding, where people can have that same balance, but go to corporate industry and earn more money. And so I think people are starting to sort of really reflect on what they value and how that is then portrayed in their life.